Welcome to the MS Dev Show, episode number 198. This week, Carl and I talk about remote work, guiding your career, and living in an RV. Should you go with the Surface Go? Stereoscopic Doom. And CSS that renders differently depending on which browser you use.
Raygun gives you complete visibility on errors, crashes, and performance problems affecting your end users. Replicate issues in seconds rather than digging through log files or having to rely on users to report errors or crashes. Raygun gives you a window into how users are really experiencing your software applications. Check it out today at raygun.com.
Hey Carl, how's it going?
It's going really good.
So we got that conference coming up, right?
Yep. I think as we're recording, there's 2 weeks left. If you want to sign up, buy a ticket, meet us and all the awesome other people that are going to be at Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin. This has always been one of our favorite conferences to go to. There's not only just tons of technology, it's not focusing in any one. So it's not just web, mobile. It's not just Microsoft or Apple or anybody's technology. It's just a ton of technology. It's at a water park, so it's kind of hard to go wrong. In fact, one of the nights they even rent out the entire evening. So it's just conference attendees at the water park going down all the slides and stuff. Or if you want the lazy river, that's okay too.
Yeah, whatever your style, they have something for you. And I would also say there are sessions on like personal and career development. Unfortunately, my extreme remote work session wasn't accepted. I would have loved to have done that talk, but if you have any questions about that we don't cover in the show today, just come up to me and ask away. Okay, so what do we have for the comment of the week?
All right, we're going to cover two comments. One is off the iTunes, a 5-star review from Coding777777. He says it's a great podcast for developers. So thank you. We also got an email from Barrett Blake. He's commenting both on the previous episode on bots, as well as the question that I had out. He says, I have yet to find a single good instance of a bot. A couple, mostly Alexa, began to come close to being actually useful, but the vast majority are worse than trying to make your way through a customer service phone menu to the point that you can actually talk to someone. As for bags, the one that I depend on is the Solo Dwayne hybrid briefcase. It's light, durable, has plenty of room for even the largest laptops and all the accessories, as well as a couple of exterior pockets for other needs. Best of all, it works equally well as a backpack or a messenger bag. I think that's kind of cool. Or even a briefcase if you're really old school. And you can quickly and easily switch so you can change up your load on your shoulders when needed. I've used it for 3 years now as my daily work bag, carrying a full-size laptop, a Surface Pro 4, and all the various cords and accessories. It's never let me down, and you really can't tell that it's gotten old as there's so little wear on it. So thank you for that feedback, Barrett. And if you want to get mentioned on the show, send us an email to feedback@msdevshow.com. Comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Stitcher. We really love those 5-star iTunes reviews.
Absolutely. Okay, so we have some really good news stories, actually. So the first one here is enabling Markdown support in WordPress. Did they finally add this feature, Carl?
Finally. It's one of those things that because it hadn't come out for quite a few years. I mean, I think I've been using Markdown for over 5 years at this point, or at least around that time. And you would think that somebody would have integrated this in Markdown sooner, but it's actually a first-class citizen. In the settings, you can go to the writing dashboard, and there's a checkbox. Use Markdown for posts and pages.
So I wonder if they let you import Markdown now as well, because that was one of the reasons why I always ruled out WordPress as an option, because my posts, I wanted them in specifically in Markdown. And actually my blog, while it's statically generated, all of the posts are 100% Markdown. And I feel like that makes it much more portable, because it always seemed like a really bad idea having HTML in your blog posts, because, what ends up happening is, you have these ancient blog posts and like browsers change and it's something that you have to keep up to date. Whereas Markdown is sort of timeless. Like even 100 years from now, if you want to interpret Markdown, it's a pretty simple formatting language. So I just feel like it's a way better choice for something like this. So it's great to see that.
Absolutely.
And then introducing the Surface Go. So I actually saw this. This was a few days ago that this was announced, and I don't think I did any tweets on it or any retweets because I'm not quite sure yet what to make of this. So do you want to break this down?
Yeah. So the Surface Go is a base price $400 10-inch tablet in the Surface lineup that has the kickstand, so it can be kind of a convertible. It also has NFC. It's using an Intel processor. It's completely fanless, and it has no vents as well.
Yeah.
And that makes it really good for industrial scenarios. And I think the key thing that's really interesting with this too is even though it has a standard Surface connector, it also has USB-C that can do video, data, and power.
Right. It's frustrating when you buy a laptop with USB-C that you can't charge over USB-C. My kids' laptops are like that. And I always have a USB-C charger. Plus I have like a 12-volt USB-C charger. So it's really nice to see this because I would probably just go USB-C for charging this. But I think I've mentioned this on the show before. It's probably been a while. But I really think that whenever you're buying a lightweight device, they should always tell you the weight of the power adapter. And in this case, they do. I don't remember the exact number, but basically it weighs almost.
But it's a tiny power adapter.
It's tiny. Yeah.
It's like half the price of the previous one.
Yeah. So that's kind of my point is like whenever you're looking at a portable device, you have to consider the weight of the device and of the charger because you're going to carry the charger with you. One thing I noticed, so this is actually a video that's going through the hardware and all of that, and it was talking about the specs that you had mentioned. And yeah, I think it's a really cool device for like industrial scenarios because you won't be sucking dirt through there. I think it's really cool that there's no fan, so you're not going to have any kind of noise or anything like that. One thing that I thought was worth calling out that was definitely marketing speak, but I think we can sort of read into more. They mentioned it had an Intel processor for quote unquote predictable performance. And it's kind of funny because we're obviously an independent podcast. We both work at Microsoft, but we want to remain independent and like, be able to give our own opinions. And I think it's interesting because they say predictable performance, which implies that if you are not using an Intel processor, that you don't have predictable performance. And I actually don't think that's as bad as it sounds, but I think it is worth calling out. Yes, this has an Intel processor, so you're going to get, the speeds that you're used to on all the applications that you run. I think they specifically created that term, though, or that phrase, because whenever you have these new Qualcomm devices and you're using emulation, I should say hypothetically, or, I guess in the real world, if you are running an ARM application, it's going to run at full performance. And if you are running an x86 application on one of those new devices, which are great devices, by the way, it will be slower because it basically has an emulation layer. Now, I actually played around with some of these, probably some of the higher end devices, and I thought they were great. And I think there's a time and a place for both types of processors and both types of performance. But I kind of wanted to call that out because I think that if you are in the market for a device like this, and this is why I'm not 100% sure like what to make of this thing, because it is a computer, but I think if I was going on vacation, I would love this as a computer because it's tiny, and I can still run everything on it. But you also got to start thinking, well, should you get a Qualcomm device? The Qualcomm devices are always instant on. The battery and standby lasts forever. And if you're running, just your web browser and maybe a couple other things that are sort of native to the device, you're going to get insane battery life where you don't even have to worry about the weight of the charger. So I think if you are in the market for a device like this, you have some hard decisions that you need to really think through how you want to use a device and how you want the device to act. I don't know what your take on that is, Carl.
I agree with you on a lot of those things. And, as part of what I do when I specifically travel, what I really want is I want something that's got really good battery life, where the ARM devices would be a no-brainer.
Yeah.
And I want something that's is easy for me to take notes on in OneNote and email. And I think that if this device were an ARM device, that would hit my set of checkboxes really easily. I generally know, I have several modes that I work in. And when I'm traveling, it's always try to be as light as possible.
Yeah.
So if this hit that one little extra checkbox, I think this would be a very interesting option for me. But without it, I can kind of leave this device. It's also a little bit pricey for me to think about for my kids. This would be an interesting device for them, but
probably not great for gaming though.
No, and because my kids, they do a lot of web games. They do tons of Fortnite. I don't know how this would run something like that, but they can do a lot of that on their iPads, which we got them, ones that were on the generation getting out. So we got them $200 brand new iPads at the time. And, that's half the price of what this is coming out as. So, I think it definitely hits certain parts of the market, but not any of the ones that we're currently interested in right now.
Yeah. If you're going on a trip, like the types of trips that you and I do are often, like you said, email, OneNote, and maybe even using a pen to like come up with some architectures or something like that. This actually is a great device, and this would be an awesome device for watching movies on a plane because it does have the kickstand, and I think it's got pretty much a perfect size screen for on a plane as well. This could also be a good companion for a Mac, to be honest with you, because I carry a big, like a 15-inch MacBook Pro, which is, fairly heavy. And I mean, I bring this out and it's basically my desktop computer is what it is. So actually, if you do run a MacBook Pro as kind of your main device, this could actually be a good companion device. And then I would say sort of the vice versa. Like if you're running a big, hefty Windows machine, then you could have like an iPad as your companion device. Like I think it's an interesting option to sort of mix and match those. I think it's confusing if you are using a big Windows machine and a little tablet like this, unless you sort of say, I'm going to use the tablet for movies and that type of thing. I think it muddies the water when you're using like two devices for email and that type of thing.
Yeah. And, the other thing that I've done a lot of is I've used the Azure app on my phone to hit like the Azure CLI.
Yeah.
And that's a little bit awkward doing something like that. Whereas like this device would be great for VS Code and the Azure CLI.
Yeah. Man, I kind of want this now because, like you said, this would be for me, this would be a really great companion device for, like you said, for email. And then VS Code would obviously run great on this thing as well. I don't think I'd run big visuals. I'm sure it's capable of doing regular Visual Studio, but like VS Code would sing on this thing. So that could be interesting. So I think it makes a good companion device for those types of activities. So. Okay, so we probably should move on to the next news item. So the next one is Omdo. I was like, what the heck is this? Omdo?
Yeah. In the 90s, I was a huge fan of those computer images where it just looked like a bunch of random gibberish. But like if you crossed your eyes a certain way, there's like a stereoscopic effect that made 3D image. So in that mess, you could cross your eyes and get that. What somebody was able to do was hack Doom, so you cross your eyes. That's why it's Omdo. So, it's kind of like splitting the word and making it crosswise. And applying the stereoscopic effect so you can play Doom as long as you're cross-eyed. And there's some really interesting gameplay. So just watching the video is a little bit hard because you're not controlling it. I think that's one of the things that you and I had discussed earlier. It's a little hard to watch, but once you get used to it, like one of the things that happens is like Doom, when you get hit, you get like the red, like edge glow.
Yep.
And that like makes it really hard for you to stay in that kind of, focusing on that image. So like when you get hit, it's actually extra hard. Mm-hmm. So not only is there the challenge of, keeping your eyes focused at that right spot, but keeping it there when there's all these extra distractions going on. I thought it was a really cool hack, and I haven't tried too hard, but I want to see if I can like download and play this. Yeah, because it definitely looked really cool.
No, that'd be pretty cool. I wonder if you can do it on like DOSBox or something. That'd be pretty neat if you could get that running. And then this last news item, CSS is awesome. The div that looks different in every browser. And I did test this in multiple browsers.
I tried everyone except for Firefox.
Okay.
And there's a code pen that I saw somewhere on Twitter. It got retweeted a bunch, and it's like what, like if you have it properly formatted and everything on its own line, it's like less than 20 lines of CSS.
Yeah.
And the resulting div is visually different on every browser.
Right.
and the funny thing is, like, if you actually dig into the comments that happened after the original poster posted this, and somebody asked him, is like, which one is the most right? And he's like, actually, I think it's Edge. And then there's lots of jokes about it being the Edge case.
Yeah, you know what this is kind of neat for? This is a neat test for telling which rendering engine is actually being used. So if you have like an email client or something like that, being able to tell what they're actually using.
And the thing I thought was most interesting is it's not like this div is just like ever so slightly different than all the other ones.
It's dramatically different.
It's dramatic. And like the one I thought was weirdest is Chrome just turns it into just this weird triangle-y mess compared to the other ones.
Yeah, it still looks artistic though.
Yeah, it's really cool. You know, it almost looks like one of those like scanning codes like you're supposed to hit with your smartphone or something.
Yeah, exactly. Very cool. So yeah, we'll have that in the show notes so that you can go out there and try it in your browser and see what shape you get. So Carl, we don't have a guest today, so why don't you kick this off? What are we talking about?
Yeah, I think me and you slowly, without realizing it, have had a slow conversation over several years about purposefully choosing the things in our lives and why do we do what we do? Are these things that we do because that's the way we've always done them personally or as a society? Like you just kind of wake up and you do your 9 to 5. Why are we choosing to do these things? And, do we have to? Can we choose other endings? I mean, one of the things that was always awesome when we were little is those choose your own adventure books.
Yeah.
And, I think without it at the time, without realizing it at the time, it was really, I think a lot of the appeal was us being able to veer off the track of, what might be the popular opinion.
Exactly.
And I think that in our career field, we do have a lot more options, especially now than we did, 5 and 10 years ago. We have the rise of remote working and that having a lot of implications on us being able to be a little bit more deliberate in choosing alternative lifestyles. I think the place where I first started thinking about this was what wasn't even in my life, but just in my career. I noticed a lot of times people were, just doing what their bosses told them. And generally that's a good thing. But a lot of times, without realizing it, they only learned the technologies that their bosses told them. They didn't do any of the passion projects that they thought were interesting. And because of that, their leadership kind of molded who they became. And yeah. I kind of learned quickly that even just doing small things on my own really made me a thought leader. It really changed the trajectory of my career. And then I saw some of the things that you were doing with your personal life and realizing hey, it's not just career. A lot of times we let even our careers affect what we do personally. You moving to Seattle was one of those. It wasn't a thing that you had to do. You were working remotely. And even when you went out there, you went out to Seattle to work for Microsoft and didn't go into work.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, the whole point was that I could drive in whenever I needed to, but it was probably 60% of the time overall, probably about 60% of the time I was still working from home. So really, now that I'm moving back to Wisconsin, it's just continuing to work from home. And it really, I just sort of realized it's just a matter of I didn't have to batch things whenever I lived out there. I could go to 3 different meetings on 3 different days and just drive in. Being remote, I have to sort of plan things in the same week. But, the funny thing is about being there and sort of being remote is you don't have an excuse to go talk to people. So when I'm remote and I'm actually going into Redmond, I will reach out to people and I'll say, hey, I'm going to be in town. We should meet up. And it's a good forcing function. When you're there, it's like, oh, we can meet up anytime. And I have this whole list of people that just never met up or I haven't talked to them forever. So there's a bit of an irony there, So there's pros and cons overall. So I did want to talk about what you were talking about earlier. I think it's tricky to sort of rip all these pieces apart and look at them separately. Because whenever you talk about like controlling your life and your career, I do think about this one thing, which is I'll have people ask like, what is your 5 year plan? Like where do you want, or where do you see yourself in 5 years or whatever? And my answer for the past probably at least 5 years has always been the same. I'm just like, I really don't care. Like I want to keep doing stuff that I like doing. But I think part of that too is that I have, worked my way into a certain part of my career. I think it would have really been difficult if I would have started out remote and worked remote for a long time. And maybe it wouldn't be difficult, but it's hard for me to imagine what that would have looked like because I didn't live that life. But I was there in the office working with people, and I think in the especially when you don't know much, having those crutches really helps. Now I know a lot more. I know how to learn. I know how to figure things out myself, and I also know how to work remote now. I know what tools I can use to talk to people, and I also know when to travel. I know that there's certain times that I do have to actually get on a plane and fly out there and do things that way. So it's a balance. It's learning things. It's complicated. There's no simple answer. But the big thing that you had pointed out was kind of molding your career, and I think everybody talks about the 5 year plan or whatever, but I think it needs to be like more tactical than that. Make sure that what you're doing overall you're happy with, and then start to get some control and grab the reins over like what you're doing now and steer yourself toward things that that you'll enjoy doing. And I think you'll be pretty well off. I mean, everybody has bumps in their career. People have been laid off, fired, whatever. I've gone through that. And it really overall I don't feel like it affected my career negatively. So you end up where you end up. So
Yeah. So you had mentioned like learning how to work remote.
mhm.
So can you kind of dig into like a little bit more about like what you've learned being a remote worker?
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting because I was not remote at all previously, and then I joined Microsoft, and then I was 100% remote. And it's really strange going from an office where there's sounds and stuff going on to, I was very clear with my family, like, hey, I'm gonna work, 8 to 5, 9 to, or yeah, I guess it was really more probably like 7 to 5 or 7 to 4, but I'm gonna work these regular hours, and you need to leave me alone. Pretend like I'm not here. And you're sitting there, it's like you and your computer, and it's just dead silent. And I'm like, oh my God. It kind of, after a while, it was driving me crazy a little bit. And you sort of get used to it after a while. But that was the biggest thing for me, was just in silence. And I understand the need for, I've done this a couple times where I will just go somewhere, like where there's a whole bunch of people and just hang out, if it's at Starbucks or wherever, or even just go sit at McDonald's for a while. Like, don't work there all day. Don't be that person, but, go in there, get some lunch and maybe sit there for an extra hour or something. And then I don't know, there's some psychology there, I think. I've sort of grown past that. I think I can sit in quiet. That being said, I usually have like some kind of learning material on in the background. I'll play something, or radio or something that just provides a little bit of sound. But yeah, I don't know. Like it's a lot of the things. I feel like a lot of the things that I learn with remote work don't. There's it's hard for me to like sort of see them now because it's just the part of my life. So I mean, there's communication tools. Like I think the video is good. It's also challenging because like as I go on, I get used to, I started to say, how can I really leverage this remote work? Like, hey, I can go, like walk around the house or something. Like I don't have to stand in, I don't have to just sit in my office. We started to do that, and now you have to turn off video. So I've had to, have some trade-offs like that. I've also tried, like if you are listening on a call, can you add some kind of physical work? Like, can you go sweep something, or can you go do this or that? Um, and I sort of have mixed results on that, because you do want to, there is some psychology around sort of engaging the physical side while you're doing mental work, and that works out better. But, a lot of experimentation, trying to figure out how to communicate with people effectively using the tools. I think you have to have, for remote work, you have to have the better the internet connection. I think the better things are going to be. Like, you don't want to be fighting with your tech. I think that's one of the biggest things. But just stay in regular contact with people. I don't have any like magical things here that will make your life better. But just know that you do have flexibility. Help other people understand how you're using that flexibility and take advantage of it. Go spend lunch with your kids at the park, or like on the trip that I'm on right now, like there's been a couple lunches where, like, in the middle of the day, I'll go swimming with the kids for an hour or two, and then I'll get back to work, because it's been really warm. Just experiment and see what works and see what doesn't.
Yeah, so I think one of the things that I've done, and we have different needs and scenarios, is you had mentioned, like, you're not in an office, so you don't have those impromptu networking pieces.
Right.
And, I'm not doing this one thing to replace any kind of like social interaction, but because I need that interaction. But, networking is important at work. So one of the things I've done is I've helped coordinate a monthly kind of like breakfast / coffee for remote workers in my area. So like once a month we get together and just talk. And, I will say pretty much every time there's something positive that's work related that comes out of there. So even though we're doing it just to kind of get out of the house, maybe get a coffee or breakfast that you might not, and meet some people. I've had so many interesting career enhancing things happen at those kind of events. So that's one thing that's been really useful to me. And then, just being able to take advantage of alternate schedules. Like, I've been able to, my vehicle needs to go into the mechanic for some reason. I can sit and do my work from the mechanics room.
I've done that many times.
So it's nice being able to enjoy that kind of flexibility as well.
Yeah, I think one replay. You talk about the hallway conversations. Those are like 5% content, 95%. I guess there's a component of relationship building there, but they waste a lot of time doing that. That's just the reality. Like, people don't realize, you're at work and people are having these hallway conversations. It sucks up a lot of people's time, especially like if there's something big going on, and there's rumors flying around or whatever. That wastes a lot of time. So I would say one tip that I have, if you were a remote worker, like, don't worry about missing some of those rumors and things like that. Like, a lot of that is just a waste of time. Use the focus to your advantage. Like, you have more focus than the people in the office. You're able to get more focus time. Use that to your advantage, become more of a technical expert, put out more content, that type of thing. If you can't get those interactions, you can't get what you need in category A, then excel in category B and just be different. Like, every team needs a combination, needs diversity, right, of thoughts and different ways of doing things. So you have a couple people that have the hallway conversations. You have a couple people that do some of the depth, more depth work and that type of thing. And that makes a good mixture on the team.
Don't wait for users to report problems. Raygun gives you complete visibility on errors, crashes, and performance problems affecting your end users. Replicate issues in seconds rather than digging through log files or having to rely on users to report errors or crashes. Raygun gives you a window into how users are really experiencing your software applications, supports all major programming languages and platforms, and integrates with your current development workflow tools too. There's a free 14-day trial, and it takes minutes to implement, so start resolving issues in your application and check it out today at raygun.com. As another point on how much those conversations add up, at a previous employer where I was also working remotely, I had to come into the office once every 3 weeks. And that one day every 3 weeks was a throwaway day for me. Yeah. Because 20 different people who I didn't talk to for 3 weeks each wanted to have a 10-minute conversation with me.
Yep. Exactly.
And so those days, like, even though like my boss thought it was like going to make me more productive, or he could keep tabs on me. Those were such drains on me, because like you said, I had been used to, working, being able to focus and do things. And now there's a day that I can't. Yeah. And in addition, I have to travel on top of it.
Yeah, exactly. So work from home, kick some butt, and, use that to your advantage. That's probably my biggest tip there.
So you've been hinting at this quite a bit. How have you been kind of like extremely changing up your work-life balance this summer?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I'll provide some of the details. So right now I'm in Omaha, Nebraska, actually. And so what we did was my wife wanted to move back to Wisconsin to be closer to family. And actually, because of some changes at work, because of what our focus is, it actually was a pretty good time to do things. Plus, the real estate market in Seattle is getting a little bit ridiculous. So sort of everything lined up, and we decided to make that move. So we do have, this fifth wheel trailer, which has a lot of room. Like my kids have their own room and their own bathroom. We have our own room, and we have a nice TV and kitchen and all that. So we said, okay, well, let's sell our house here. Or I should say not here. Let's sell our house in Seattle. And then we can basically go on the road for a couple weeks, and then we'll close on our house in Wisconsin. So we have the new house lined up in Wisconsin. We close on the 16th, which is probably by the time you listen to this, the house will probably be closed on, and we'll actually be in Wisconsin. But it was almost, I think 3, maybe 4 weeks on the road, working remotely. And, this has been a new experience. Like I didn't know like the good and the bad. So I can kind of walk through that. It's kind of interesting. Like I found out, like right now I'm sitting in our bedroom, so that the kids are like in their room, and you probably hear some background noise, but they're kind of in and out and that type of thing. But I have to find a place to work. The internet really varies, and I found out on the trailer itself we have one air conditioning unit, and then it has ducts that go into every room. It's roughed in for a second air conditioner, but I didn't buy it because I didn't know if I'd need the second air conditioner. Well, it's 100 degrees outside and super humid. Turns out we need that second AC unit. So that's been a little tough. So it's been not so great. Like we basically make it cold at night. We get caught up with the AC, but it was 80 degrees overnight last night. The nice thing in Seattle was every night, even in the summer when it was warm, it would get, or even when it was hot, it would get cold at night, and you could cool down your house. So like our air conditioner is running 24/7 and is really just not able to keep up. So that's been one challenge. Plus RVs are just notoriously like they're designed to have 70-mile-per-hour winds in an earthquake, right? I mean, you're going down the road. The thing is, it's experiencing winds and an earthquake at the same time. And they try to make a lot of the components as cheap as possible. So now, like the latest saga is like our refrigerator is, I don't know, it's losing the battle to keep things cold. So I actually think it's low on refrigerant. So I have to like deal with that kind of stuff. But overall, this is a really cool way to move because the kids, every RV park that we're at has a swimming pool. And actually we're staying at a lot of KOAs, which are expensive, but they have, like the one we're at right now has an amazing playground with a zip line and like this basketball thing that you like jump in. They have like these cars that you can ride around in. What else do they have? And then they also have like pizza at certain nights. The last one we were in had like a bouncy pillow. It had a bouncy castle. It had these giant slides. That was in Denver. And, so they've been having a fantastic time. I've sort of had to, jump back and forth between work and like, getting them the things that they need. But it's been overall, it's been working out pretty well. Remote work doesn't have to be stationary, although I am using a little AT&T hotspot and I have unlimited internet on that. We're using over 20 gigabytes of data per day between all the Netflix streams and all the work that I'm doing. And I found that the speeds really vary, and we get deprioritized after 22 gigabytes. So I am running into that. In Denver, we ran into that big time over the 4th of July. I think like everybody was streaming video over LTE, and even though we had good signal, the speeds were pretty much unusable. And campground Wi-Fi is sort of iffy. I'm actually on the campground Wi-Fi now, so this is actually about as good as it gets. But yeah, that's a big challenge. I guess my tip there is if you're going to do something like this, if you're going to travel and you need to work and do calls and things like that, try to book places that are near major highways because there tends to be good internet near the major highways. But even that is not for sure. There's a site, I think it's called Open Signal. You can go look, and it's actually an app on your phone. You can actually go look at the map, and it will tell you the signal of the various carriers. But you just don't quite know until you're there, and then you just sort of have to deal with it. So that's been one of my challenges. I also found out that AT&T through a lot of states still has 3G, not even 4G. They have 4G is workable, 3G is not. Like Western Nebraska, even along the highway was 3G, and there was a lot of complaints coming from everybody in the car on that one. I couldn't even listen to a podcast reliably over 3G. So, let's see what else. Yeah, I was gonna say, you got any questions for me?
No, I think the coolest thing about what you've decided to do, though, is this is something that your entire family is experiencing together at the same time.
Yep.
And everybody, even though that you do have some younger ones, they're going to remember this as being something different that's occurred in their lives.
Absolutely.
And it's a cool experience to be able to go across such vast different distances and experience the states that you go through in a different way.
Yeah. So here's the saying that I think will resonate with people that have kids. You have 18 summers with your kids, and really the first couple don't count, right? So let's say 15. So you really have 15 summers with your kids. That's it. 15. Like, check them off every year. You check one off and it's gone.
Well, and not only that, but the last couple they don't want to spend with you anyways. So take a couple off.
Yeah, I mean, my kids, my boys are mostly into Fortnite now.
Yeah, my oldest ones, they could care less about doing those kinds of things with us.
Yeah. Now my 6-year-old daughter, my 6-year-old daughter, she's having the time of her life because she loves to swim. She loves this. She is having the time of her life. And I'm hoping that she remembers this, and we're going to, do more stuff like this in the summer. But I think this is just so fun. And actually, 2 years ago when we moved out to Seattle, we actually drove our minivan out there, and we had 2 dogs, we had 2 fish, we had everything that we needed for the trip and everything we needed for the 2 months after that because our stuff was in storage. So we had, 2 months worth of stuff in our minivan, and we went into hotels every night, and I literally had to empty the entire minivan into the hotel room every single night, where we stayed. And
that's annoying.
Yeah. And even through all of that, like my wife and I, we look back to that trip, which was only like 7 days, and we're like, that was one of the best trips that we ever had. It was 7 days, and it was mostly driving, and we still had so much fun because we did get to do, some fun touristy stuff, and that's what we're doing on this trip too. I mean, we're basically living in a place for a couple days, and we're able to go into town. Like tonight, we're going to go have a supper in Omaha. I don't know what they're known for. Is it steaks or something? So, we'll do a little bit of research and figure out like what the cool place is to go. Probably take the kids to a park. We've been doing that at every place that we've stayed in. And then we also have the weekends, depending on when we have to drive. Sometimes we have to drive on the weekends. And one cool thing that, that we had to balance on this trip is like, how much driving do we want to do versus staying? So we were in Denver for, actually 8 days and 7 nights. And, here in Omaha, it's just 3 nights. In, Salt Lake City, I think it was 5 days that we had, so you sort of have to balance that because we're doing, basically 7 or 8 hours worth of driving between each location. Basically we said, hey, we want to stay in a place for a long time, and we just want to get the driving over with. Just do it every, like we just drive like once or twice a week and do it that way. But another way to do this would be stay in every place for 2 days and just drive 3 hours every day. I mean, that was certainly an option as well. I think with kids, I think 4 or 5 days is probably optimal. It was kind of what my wife and I were talking about. When our kids are gone, our plan is to just sell the house and just live in a motorhome. And in that case, I think what we'd end up doing because of work and everything like that, I think we would end up staying in a place. I've talked to a couple full-timers. They'll generally stay in a place for like 2 or 3 weeks. So I think we'd be interested in doing that, and then maybe just drive 3 hours and just do, just work your way around the country. There's so much to see, everywhere that's just what we want to be able to do.
Yeah, that's been a
Any
really cool
other?
trip to live vicariously through you.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, it's something. It's challenging. I mean, the work has been really challenging. Like originally, this was supposed to be like a 9 week trip, and I think we turned it into like a 3.5, 4 week trip. I will say like this was a good amount of time. I'm glad it's not 9 weeks. The work is challenging, and like right now it's funny they're mowing grass, like right by me. So there's challenges like that for phone calls. There's the heat, but I'll go swimming later. Um, I will be happy to be in a house and have my office sort of separated again, be able to focus quite a bit more. And then also I'm going to have the gigabit fiber installed at the house. Having that stable connection, yeah, yeah, having that stable connection that I know I can count on is going to be pretty huge. So, yeah, while this is, I feel like we're having like the time of our life. It's also, I'm going to be a little bit glad whenever it's done, and I'm looking forward to the next thing. I will also say, like, I was talking about going full time when basically when my daughter turns 18, which would be in, let's say, 12 years. That's when we'd like to buy a motorhome and do this full time. What I'm really counting on is 5G technology. So supposedly this 5G tech is around the corner. Maybe it's even a couple years away, but the promise is that you will get gigabit-ish speeds, and I'm hoping within 12 years that's basically the case. I'm thinking it'll be pretty ubiquitous, right? Where we can actually have, basically high-speed internet wherever we want to go, all across the country, and be able to do this remotely. And I think when that happens, I think a lot of people are going to start considering that type of lifestyle. I mean, it just gives you a whole new type of freedom. And then if you do have to travel for work, you just drive there. If you got to be in Seattle in 4 weeks, you just adjust your trip and say, okay, well, we're just going to start heading that way, and we'll stay this many days in each place. And I mean, what a cool way to live, for sure.
Awesome. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about, and because you've made such a drastic change, and if we're on this like choosing your life thing, not everything has to be that dramatic. When we were at Build, at this point, it was like 2.5 months ago. I did what I always do for a conference. I packed my backpack with all the stuff that I need for the conference. And then I realized I had extra room, so I packed extra stuff. And that, right? Because, I mean, that's just what I do. I want to be over-prepared. If anything happens, I want to be able to, tackle it with all the tools that I would need. Yeah. And it kind of makes for a miserable experience. I mean, if you look around at conferences, and I've been to plenty, and I know not everybody has the luxury of going to conferences as much as I do, but everybody kind of has a backpack, or they're wearing nothing. Maybe a couple people have a messenger bag. And I realize that as I'm traveling, and I'm doing a lot more traveling now than I used to, that a backpack is just a terrible way for me to operate from. So what I've kind of was researching is, what can I do that comfortably carries everything that I need for traveling, conferences, stuff like that, but yet doesn't get in my way. So what I started looking at was messenger bags big time. And this is just my own personal view. I was able to find out that a messenger bag that was kind of just the right size, just the right look. I didn't want it to be ugly. I wanted it to be classy, something I could wear, bring stuff with if I had to be dressed up or casual. So I found one by a company called Nutsack Bags. And at the time, it was their biggest one. They've come out with a bigger one since. And I took it on the next trip with me. And I will say, for flying, it was great. Because in the past, like, even though I had my backpack to like shove under my seat, it like barely fit under the seat, and which means I had less leg room and stuff like that. But with this, I was able to comfortably keep it under there. It had everything I needed, and it was great. I was also out for a conference, and I carried this too, and that's where I realized that while I found a good bag for traveling, it still didn't fit my conference needs. because this conference was in the middle of July. And in the middle of July means you're wearing pants, you're wearing a shirt, but yet it's too hot for a jacket. Now, if this were in the middle of winter, I would just shove stuff in my jacket and that would be good enough. And then I realized that women really have it awesome because they can have purses. And a purse is, something that you hold, wallet, phone, notepad, whatever. And that's when I started talking to you because I was interested in maybe getting like a small tablet. And you had really talked me out of just getting extra tech gear for the sake of having tech gear. So what I ended up doing is I ended up calling from that same nutsackbags.com. They've got something called a man bag, damn it. And it's a funny little play on words, but it's essentially, a man's equivalent of a purse. And I've been actually using that pretty much for my daily carry. I keep my wallet, my badge, like just all the stuff that you kind of need with you, but that I would normally keep in my jacket, except it's too hot for jackets now. But the additional thing that I did need is because I also want to be able to like take notes, and being able to type on a phone keyboard is not as fast as if you have a regular one. I found a folding keyboard that's just amazing from iClever. The nice thing about it is it folds, and when it unfolds, it's the same size as a full-size keyboard. It also has backlighting, and I love backlit keyboards.
Yeah.
And it just does the job for me well. So that I keep in that bag nonstop. So whenever I need it, it's there. And I can take quick notes, emails, really learning the iOS keyboard shortcuts, and where there aren't enough keyboard shortcuts because there's no like Alt Tab.
Yeah.
But this keyboard also has the ability where you can hit Home, you have a search button, so you can kind of get there quicker. And it's actually a really good experience considering the limitations of iOS. So between those two things, I actually have, a ton of traditional style backpacks from all my previous employers. We have an MS Dev Show one. Those I'm still going to use because there's a trip that I'm coming up that's like a 2-day trip, and I'm not going to bring my suitcase. I'll have a backpack filled with clothes. I'll have my bigger messenger carrying bag for my laptop and my tech gear, and I'll be good to go on just that. So, for me, it's like, making sure that you have the right software tools to do your day job as a software engineer is one thing, but also making sure that you're optimizing for your experiences and what's going to make you comfortable. Because if you're carrying around a 15 or 20 pound backpack for a 3-day conference, you're not going to be happy at the end.
That just kills my back. I don't know how people like you do that. I can only have like a couple pounds on my back. Otherwise, it just kills me. So I don't get how people do it.
And I know that like a lot of people aren't going to carry like the man bag that I have because they don't like how it looks. But one thing that my wife said, because she's kind of like against me having that just because of the social stigma. But one of the things she realized, I live in the Midwest. This is kind of like Bible Belt country. And there's a lot of people who have Bibles in these like canvas cloth carrying cases. And she says, I'm just pretending you're bringing a Bible with you everywhere you go, because that's what it looks like. So that's how she gets around, her husband, quote, having a purse.
That's pretty amusing. Okay. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, I just hope that this opens up people to be aware of, where they might not be happy with their careers, their lives. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be small. We have a lot of flexibility to just kind of shape and make the decisions to live how we want to. A lot of times you look back in the day, you look at like people who were working factories. You got to clock in at 6 a.m. You don't get done for 8 to 12 hours. You clock out, you go home, and you're so tired that all you want to do is zone out and do nothing. But we live, in a time and in a place with our careers that we have lots of options. So why are we, living the lives the way that we are? Let's make sure that we're doing something that's making us and our families happy.
Absolutely. And of course, they're mowing the lawn right next to the trailer. So, one thing I would love to get, I would love to have people send in their questions about, about remote work and about, also about the RV trip here. I'm happy to answer any questions that people have on, basically doing this type of trip. And I'd like to see more people do it. I know it's getting more and more popular, but I'd love to see more tech workers. Right now, it's old people and I don't know, your mix of just random other people that are on vacation or renting something. And I'd love to see more and more tech people doing this. Okay, so you have a life hack tip of the week. What is that?
Yeah. So I follow Jeff Blankenberg, and he has a newsletter, and this actually came out this morning in his newsletter. Also, just as a little note, he also works for Amazon, so this is a tip about Amazon. And I'm just going to quote his paragraph here. If your house is anything like mine, you have an abundance of Amazon boxes lying around waiting to be recycled. In addition, we also have plenty of toys and clothing our children have outgrown and plenty of other household goods that aren't being put to much use but are still in great condition. Did you know that you could put all that stuff back in an Amazon box and Amazon will pay for shipping to send it to Goodwill or another charity? You can clean out your house, reuse those cardboard boxes, and help a charity all at the same time. You can print free shipping labels at givebackbox.com/Amazon. And he also has a video that he's included there we'll have in the show notes. I didn't know about this service.
Cool.
And as I thought this also would really fit in with the topic of the day about like just changing our lives, maybe doing some decluttering. I mean, we all have stuff somewhere in our lives that we don't need, even if it's the stuff that we just got in those Amazon boxes.
Yeah, this is super awesome. Like I had no idea because we take stuff to Goodwill on a regular basis, and we also recycle our Amazon boxes. But like, I can avoid that trip and do it this way. So that is very cool. Cool. Anything else you want to cover, Carl?
I think that's it for today. I hope people got a little bit out of this. This is a not quite our normal episode. Mm-hmm. And if you want to hear more episodes like this, let us know. If you have any ideas for your future episodes that might be along these lines, let us know.
Absolutely. So where can people find you, Carl?
You can find me on Twitter at Carl Schweitzer.
And you can find me at twitter.com/ytechie. So thanks for the great conversation, Carl.
Absolutely.